Okay. Hold on one second. I just got on the wrong screen. Okay. Hello, I'm Dr. Wood. I'm a naturopathic physician with Temple Natural Health in Lacey. But I do a lot of telemedicine as well. Um, and I do a lot of treating of all manner of digestive concerns in my practice. At Temple Natural Health, we offer colon hydrotherapy, abdominal massage, a variety of things that are really targeted to helping people with all sorts of digestive issues. So I know this, before I move on, I just want to say thank you to Monica and thank you to the Olympia Co-op for hosting these classes. I'm really happy to be here, and I just so appreciate all of the wonderful, high quality food that they provide us all with. So thank you. Um, all right, so just want to touch on that this is sort of a taboo topic. It's not something that gets discussed openly very often, and so I think we should change that because it's really important to understand what's going on with your digestion, and it's a really natural thing. I have said many times that I wish we had just like little age-appropriate installments of like anatomy and physiology education built in as you go along public school education because wouldn't it be so great if we had like a sort of a guidebook to our body that we all learn as we grow up? I think it would help us to avoid so many of the issues that people end up facing in their health. So I'm hoping that this class will kind of be like that, of helping you to gain a deeper understanding of your own body and what's going on there and how you might be able to support it better. So first gonna start with just a quick definition so we're all on the same page. I am gonna, let's see, share my screen real quick. Um, let's see, there we go. Okay. Okay, so this is the Bristol stool chart. It is just like a clinical tool for helping to define, how someone's bowel movements are. Um, and so when I talk about constipation, it can cover a lot of different things. In conventional medicine, it's sometimes considered normal to be anywhere between 3 bowel movements a week and 2 bowel movements a day. And I would disagree with that. I think that tends to lead to problems if you're not going at least once a day. So I would say normal, healthy would be like um, at least 1 very large or 2 large, complete, and easy bowel movements per day. There's, of course, variation among healthy people, but we need to be approximately eliminating everything that we ate in the last couple days and not have a whole bunch left over. Um, it's not just about the number of bowel movements, it's also, the quality, like texture and so if you're having 4 bowel movements a day, but they're like each one is a little hard pellet, that's not, that's constipated. If you have hard, dry stools, like little round pellets, or if you find yourself really having to strain a lot, or if, from the difficult bowel movements, you're struggling with persistent hemorrhoids, those can all be signs of constipation. Um, okay, let's see. I'm going to stop that share, and I sometimes co-teach this class with my colleague who's a registered dietitian, and then we can share the images for each other, and that makes it a little simpler on this end, but here we go. Okay. All right, so um, the colon is, the final 5 feet or so of the intestines. Um, it Has a number of roles. Um, Kind of the two biggest ones are as a fermentation chamber. And so, in the small intestine, the, section of tube above the colon, that's where we're doing most of our absorption of nutrients, um, our really, more thorough digestion of foods, using like chemical mediators like stomach acid, digestive enzymes, etc., to break the food down and then extract the vitamins, minerals, carbohydrates, proteins, etc. And then what's left is the types of fiber that we cannot uh, digest or absorb. Um, so that is what the bacteria that live in our colon ferment. And interestingly, about 10% of the energy that that is produced in our body that helps run our whole system is actually made by those bacteria fermenting that fiber. Um, and so, that's kind of a significant contribution. Um, okay, so I'm going to stop sharing, but I'll continue. Let's see, I think, yeah, we're off of that. Okay. Um, so we have trillions of gut bacteria. They are fermenting that fiber, producing energy, and then producing some types of um, vitamins as well, and some types of neurotransmitters as well, or kind of helping our cells to do that. So, depending on the type of bacteria present, we may or may not have significant gas production. Some types of bacteria, really the types that we tend to want more of, produce the fiber and ferment the fiber and produce acetic acid, basically vinegar. And that is not a gas, and therefore we will not get bloated from the production of acetic acid. Other types of bacteria, which, it's fine to have a little bit of these types, but if we have a lot of these types, they ferment fiber and they produce either hydrogen or methane gas. And then if we have a lot of those, then we end up with a lot of gas. And not only is that uncomfortable and causes bloating, but it actually can cause motility issues as well. Methane gas in particular causes reverse peristalsis. Um, so it is highly tied to constipation. So that's kind of one of the main roles of the colon. The other is as a dehydration chamber. So the material that's coming down the pipe from the small intestine is liquid. Um, if we were to just pass that liquidy material all the time, we would get very dehydrated and die eventually from dehydration. So the colon actually really has to draw the water um, out of that liquidy kind of digestive um, stool and turn it into solid stool. But it kind of moves at an approximately steady rate in that dehydration process. And so if the stool is moving through at a pretty good clip, then it will become dehydrated into just like a soft formed stool, and then you will pass it, and it'll just kind of move through um, at a steady rate. If it's taking too long, if the stool is sitting around for a longer time, then that dehydration effect has too long to act on the stool, and it just can get harder and drier until, especially along the walls of the colon, you end up with really dense, sort of clay-like deposits, and then that can build up over time. And so the colon can just kind of fill in toward the center with very dry material. Um, and that can worsen constipation. It's sort of like almost a self-perpetuating situation. Um, I'm going to go over some common reasons why you might be chronically constipated and kind of some tips on how to deal with them. Often there are multiple interrelated reasons, and so it can take some finesse and kind of working through multiple issues. So it's not always, super simple, just change one thing. And that would be a reason to come in and have a consult visit and, that's what I and the other practitioners and doctors at Tummy Temple or Temple Natural Health, we just changed the name of our business, That is what we are best at. So we're happy to help if you have kind of a more complex um, presentation. Uh, okay. So very common reason for constipation, dehydration, not drinking enough water. Most people would benefit from getting about half your body weight in ounces. So if you weigh 150 pounds, that would be about 75 ounces per day. If you weigh 200 pounds, that would be about 100 ounces a day. There's kind of a limit, though, no more than a gallon a day. You can actually get water toxicity with having too much water. And adding electrolytes is really important. That helps you absorb the water more readily, and we need those electrolytes for a lot of things. The one that we tend to use very frequently is called E-Light. I am going to post a link in the chat um, that where you can take a look if you're curious about the things, the tools that we tend to use and the supplements that we find very helpful. So yeah, adding electrolytes very important. And then caffeine can be, and especially coffee can be very dehydrating. Alcohol can be very dehydrating. So you would potentially need to drink additional water over kind of your baseline if you're having a lot of those things, or if you're exercising a lot, or it's obviously very hot out and you're sweating a lot, doing a lot of sauna therapy. Um, Second major, very basic cause of constipation is lack of fiber in the diet and just kind of poor quality, highly processed diet. The FDA says that we need about 25 grams of fiber per day. I would say that's not enough. I would say at least 30, but maybe even 35, 40 grams per day. Our ancestors, our ancestors have so much variability in types of diets that they have eaten, depending on where in the world we're talking about. But we have some evidence both from people who still live a hunter-gatherer lifestyle today, traditional hunter-gatherer lifestyle, and then fossil proof that a lot of hunter-gatherers who were eating, lots of variety of wild foods were getting 100 grams of fiber a day. So we are not really asking you to get anywhere close to that. It would be hard to meet that today because our foods have been bred to have less fiber in them so that, in favor of the foods being richer in carbohydrates, richer in naturally occurring sugars, and easier to chew. Sometimes those really fiber-rich foods take a lot of chewing, and so, over generations and generations, our farmers have bred them to have less fiber, so they're easier to chew. So it's, unless we're doing a ton of foraging, we're probably not going to be getting even close to that, but you can get a long way as far as gut health with getting above 30 grams a day. Work up slowly. That is very, very important. If you have been not eating a whole lot of fiber, suddenly dump in a whole bunch, that typically does not go very well. And people often feel very bloated. So yeah, easing into it. For example, like if you don't eat beans very often, which are an excellent source of fiber, first off, cooking them yourself, soaking them overnight, slow cooking them, pouring off the water, all of that can really help make them less gas prone. But also, starting with like 2 tablespoons a day and doing that for a week, and then a quarter cup a day and doing that for a week, and then a half a cup a day doing that for a week. It takes consistency, but going slowly essentially gives you a chance to almost like garden your microbiome, fertilize it in a way that slowly over the weeks, more of the types of bacteria that know what to do with that type of fiber and digest it well they'll grow into greater prominence, and then you will gain a greater capacity to digest that fiber. You could do the same thing with like a teaspoon of ground flaxseed and then slowly working up. You want to make sure you're getting plenty of water when you're adding fiber. That's the other kind of big whoopsie that can happen is, especially with like a fiber supplement, or this would apply to like chia seeds or ground flax seeds. If you suddenly start taking a tablespoon of ground flax seed per day or psyllium husk or whatever added fiber, and you're not pairing it with a fair amount of extra water, at least 8 ounces of additional water, especially if you were a little bit on the dehydrated side to begin with, that could sort of form like a gel plug and just make everything worse. So must be paired with extra water. Um, just general food sources of dietary fiber are whole grains, legumes like beans and lentils, nuts, seeds, whole fruits, and veggies, of course. But a lot of people just think of fruits and vegetables, or especially just vegetables, and forget that whole grains and legumes actually typically have a lot more um, fiber than most vegetables do. And then, for example, chia seeds and ground flax seeds are a really, really good source of fiber. Increasing fermented foods and is really, really helpful for overall microbiome health and can help with constipation. And then we just want to be, for the most part, avoiding highly processed foods, fast foods, and potentially decreasing meat and dairy in the diet. Cheese is very constipating. So eating a lot of cheese if you're struggling with constipation is not really going to be your friend, more so than yogurt, for example. There's cheese is very kind of binds things up, and then too much meat, if it's not balanced out by all these other foods, can be very constipating. Um, we manufacture a really good quality fiber supplement called Smooth Passage. Um, and it's a mix of ground flax seed, psyllium husk, and then some really soothing gut healing herbs. Um, and so that can be a great option. And, same thing, just maybe slowly work up on that and add water. And then finally, not enough exercise. I hear a lot from people that they used to run all the time and they were very regular in their bowel movements, and then now they're more sedentary and they're struggling with the constipation, and all other things being the same, that maybe their diet's the same, their hydration's the same, the thing that's changed is the movement and the exercise. So even just, brisk walking, 5 minutes of like yoga and stretching that sort of compresses and stretches the abdomen can be really helpful as well. It doesn't have to be like going for a 5 mile run, although some people do find that very helpful. Let's see, I'm gonna take a look to see if anyone's posted any questions. Nope, not yet. Feel free to shout them out if you think of anything. Um, a lot of people can go through a situation where they essentially have gotten into the habit of ignoring their body's signals when they need to have a bowel movement. Um, our bodies are creatures of habit. We are adapted to living according to daily or circadian patterns, such as waking around the same time each day, eating around the same time, and pooping around the same time. And if we don't allow that, don't make time for that, or kind of suppress those urges over months, years, those bodily functions can be sort of suppressed, and it can take retraining to get them back. This happens a lot with certain jobs. So, it's for very obvious reasons. Like if you're a teacher of small children or teens or, whoever, where you can't just leave the classroom full of rowdy kids when nature calls, or bus driver, where you're between like you don't have a break for quite a while and you're just stuck there. So, this is not to say that you've done it to yourself. There's a lot of situations where this is kind of built into the types of jobs that people have. That said, it can definitely play a role, and you can definitely kind of retrain some of that. So, the way that I would recommend going about that would be picking a time of day, maybe typically in the morning, is helpful. Maybe start your day with a glass of warm water or lemon water. Um, and then um, even if you don't have any urge, just pick a time that's a time that you typically have a little bit of a break, don't have to be running off anywhere, aren't super stressed, and just sit on the toilet for like 5 to 10 minutes. Probably not any longer than that, or it can start to put too much pressure on the backs of the legs. Um, but just for a little while, maybe even like read a magazine that's relaxing, like something where you're just chilling. It is helpful to have a squatty potty or one of those stools to put your feet up on. That helps align the intestines and make everything easier. Unkink there's a little spot in the rectum that gets kinked sitting the way that a normal toilet will make you sit, and having your knees up higher takes that away. And then it can be helpful to do some gentle belly massage. So that would be starting out pressing in the right lower quadrant of your stomach, and then going up to the right upper quadrant, like just below where you feel your ribs, across the middle, and then down the left side in a circle that, if you look down at your belly, it would be a clockwise circle. So just doing like that, those circles for a little while, and doing that every single day. And if you don't go, that is not the point. Do not get stressed about it. If this is just about reestablishing the signaling between our parasympathetic rest and digest nervous system and the colon. Just building that pattern again, essentially giving your body the opportunity at regular intervals to eliminate. And it can really, really help to bring back more of a daily elimination pattern. But it doesn't necessarily going to happen every single day or right away. And then if you're just not having any urge to go, then taking something to help stimulate motility can be really helpful. Let's see. Oh, someone is asking, can water consumption include other clear beverages like tea? I would say herbal tea, yes. Black and green tea, not totally ideal. I mean, it counts, but they're a little bit dehydrating. So you will pee a little bit more than you would with with like herbal tea, for example. Another question is, what do I think of Miralax? I think it's okay in a pinch, but it's not my favorite. The compound, the chemical compound found in Miralax, the way during the manufacturing process, it can end up with some contamination with a chemical that is not great. I don't love it for kids. There's some research that it can worsen cognitive issues. I want to say, I haven't looked this up in a little while, but yeah, there's some kind of cognitive behavioral issues that potentially could be worsened by regular Miralax use in children. So I don't try and stop people from using it in the short term, but my goal is to kind of switch to something else that is maybe a little bit safer to use regularly. Another question is, what about taking digestive enzymes, prebiotics, and probiotics? We are going to talk all about that. So we'll get there soon. Okay, so if you're not having any urge to go to the bathroom, it's just like not coming back. Some of the tools that I will start people with are Daiju, which is an herbal formula. It's actually it's a Chinese medicine formula, and we have it manufactured at Tummy Temple. It actually was manufactured by a family, a Chinese family who had, a very long history of manufacturing it. It was their family recipe, and they made it for us for decades. And then they sold us, they wanted to retire, and they sold us the equipment. And so we manufacture it. It works really well. It is pretty gentle. It's not habit forming. And if you take it on an empty stomach, it's a little stronger, more like a laxative, although it's not like a really strong laxative. If you take it with meals, it's more like stimulates production of digestive juices, of stomach acid, natural production of stomach acid, digestive enzymes, and bile through its bitter herbs. And then kind of helps with a little bit of motility activity. So that is a great one. And then there's another one called Motil Restore that is great as well. That is very specific herbs. I think it's ginger and artichoke leaf extract that helps stimulate motility through the intestines as well. So those are a great place to start. And then colon hydrotherapy or colonics are a really, really useful tool. Um, you know, I was talking a little bit earlier in the class today about how stool can kind of build up and become hard and clay-like and take up more and more space inside the colon and just get stuck. And then even if you're still going to the bathroom, it's just a little bit of softer stool that's kind of moving through the center. Um, and so colonics are a really useful tool at that point to kind of soak and soften things up so that it can actually come out. Um, this is something that I and everyone at Temple Natural Health are very comfortable talking about, but I know that's not true of a lot of people. So hopefully you're finding this useful and it's not too much TMI. Um, Stress can play a huge role in constipation. Um, when we are in sympathetic dominance, the sympathetic nervous system is our fight or flight state. Um, the digestive tract just kind of goes dormant. It just kind of shuts down. So our nervous systems are highly tuned to stress and accomplished at uh, allocating resources wherever they seem most needed. So when we're in a really stressed out state, our bodies essentially respond like we're running from a bear. Um, and that is obviously, if you stop and think about it, not the time when you would want to squat and go to the bathroom. So that's why our nervous systems just kind of grind everything to a halt. Now is not the time. And so if you're stressed out a lot, then that's going to be a problem with regular elimination. And it's not just the motility that shuts down, although it definitely does when we're very stressed out. The body also doesn't produce as much saliva, it doesn't produce as much stomach acid, doesn't produce as much digestive enzymes or bile. So all of those, I think of that as sort of like digestive fire that um, gets everything all broken down and properly digested so that so that we can get the nutrition out of it and so that it also doesn't just kind of ferment or like go bad. Um, all of that isn't working as well. So, yeah, if we're stressed out a lot of the time, that can lead to poor digestion, a lot of excess fermentation in the wrong places along the digestive tube, a lot of bloating, and definitely constipation. Let's see, I often find anticipation or anxiety before travel results in constipation. There are so many things about travel that worsen constipation. That is absolutely one of them. Sitting for long periods, whether it's in a car or in a plane. Oftentimes we don't drink as much when we're in a car, on a road trip or in a plane because we don't want to have to pull over and urinate frequently. Um, and so, yeah, there's so many things. I hear that all the time that um, constipation gets worse with travel. And the bringing along electrolytes and bringing along that Daiju that I mentioned, those are some of our best tools for helping keep things moving during travel. So, ways that we can help with that are, of course, exercise is really, really great for um, getting us back into a more relaxed state, increasing endorphins. Meditation, like listening to a 10-minute guided meditation while you're waiting for your flight, for example, or first thing in the morning or last thing before you go to bed. Yoga, stretching, those can all really help. On a body work level, um, coming in for massage can be really helpful. I do craniosacral therapy. That is such a helpful therapy for kind of getting back into the body when we've been like all, way in an overactive brain state, and just getting back into a parasympathetic rest and digest state. Um, Supplements can be very helpful, especially if people are having an issue with poor digestion. So you can actually take digestive enzymes, as someone mentioned earlier or was asking about. Um, I would say first step would be ideally trying to take some belly breaths, try to not eat on the run, try and sit down and like take your time. That's really, really helpful. But that's not always possible. In a pinch, taking some extra digestive factors can be really, really useful. Um, we have like straight digestive enzymes. The one we use is called Digestzym V. But we also have one called Temple Total Digest that has a little bit of stomach acid, a little bit of digestive enzymes, and a little bit of bile. So it has all three of the main digestive factors. That can be really, really useful. One of the clues that will tell you that you might have low stomach acid and have a hard time digesting meat or very high protein things in particular is if you were to eat a burger or a steak, if you notice that it feels heavy and sort of drags, uh, just like kind of a like gut punch feeling, or just feels like it takes a really long time to digest, that typically suggests that you might have low stomach acid. And in those cases, you may benefit from taking a supplement like Temple Total Digest that has a little bit of, it's called betaine hydrochloride in it. Um, let's see, I've got some more questions. My nurse practitioner says better to help constipation is taking things by mouth, working downward rather than by colonics, which is working up for upward. Um, well, I would disagree with that. I think that's kind of a simplified view. The goal of colonics is to clear out the old hardened stuff. So it's not to like replace your own natural functioning. But done correctly, it actually can sort of like tonify and like get the colon working better. Um, yeah, I just find that so often there's almost like a blockade. Like it's not 100% blockage, but there's this really stuck blockade, and the capsules, laxatives, that sort of thing, A, um, isn't sufficient, and B, some types of laxatives are habit forming, and if you're just relying that on that over and over again for years, the colon kind of gets dependent on it. And sometimes the colonics are just like a faster reset. They're very gentle, but it just like clears the blockade, and then the digestive enzymes or a little bit of motility support work a lot better after that. So that's my experience. Can one take Daiju at night before bed, or when is the best time? Um, you can take it different ways, but yeah, the simplest way would be at bedtime, and probably for most people, a good starting dose would be about 20. They're tiny pellets, so that sounds insane, but you can easily swallow 20, approximately 20 pellets with like one sip of water. You just tip them into your mouth and swallow them. But yeah, at bedtime. But sometimes we'll have people take like 5 or 10 with each meal, and then also the 20 at bedtime if they're really having a decent amount of constipation. And then you're getting that little stimulation and the kind of bitters effect. And that actually was the next thing I was going to talk about, which is digestive bitters. And so bitters work by activating the bitter taste receptors that we have both on the tongue in the mouth, but we actually also have bitter taste receptors all the way through the digestive tract. And when they are stimulated by bitter foods as well as digestive, like herbal bitter formulas, that helps trigger the body to produce more digestive enzymes, stomach acid, and bile. So bitters are fantastic. I know they've got some great bitters at the Olympia Co-op. We have a bitters formula called Temple Bitters, and I like that one because it also has a really soothing herb in it called manvine. Um, and so it kind of does, it plays two roles. It helps calm you down, get you into more of a rest and digest state, and then also provide the bitter stimulation to help with all those digestive factors. And then finally, magnesium citrate is a really useful tool. It works very similarly to Miralax. They are both osmotic laxatives, which means that um, they stay in the digestive tract and through osmosis pull extra water into the digestive tract after them, and so they soften the stool that way. Um, Temple Calm is the one that we manufacture, and it's just straight magnesium citrate powder. It's really easy to modulate the dose because it's in a powder form, but of course you can get capsules as well if you prefer that. And for that, typically a starting dose would be like 250 milligrams at bedtime. But a lot of times people need more than that, and it's very safe to take more than that with magnesium citrate. The only thing that will happen is if you significantly overshoot, you will get diarrhea because it worked too well. But then you would just reduce the dose back down a little bit. Um, those are some very simple tools to get started. Um, some causes of low stomach acid are high stress, nutrient deficiencies, stomach inflammation, age. We just tend to produce less stomach acid with age. And then H. pylori is a type of stomach infection or a bacteria that lives in the stomach that um, both causes some low-level inflammation in the stomach that over time can make the body produce less stomach acid, but also the bacteria itself produces bicarbonate, basically baking soda. So it kind of suppresses some of the um, or buffers some of the stomach acid. And then there are many, many acid suppressing medications where, like the purpose of the medication is to reduce stomach acid production. And so those are typically used to treat heartburn, but they can really worsen constipation, unfortunately. Um, and and make it so we just can't digest the protein in our food very well. So sometimes we'll get more like heavy, bloated feeling. And they can cause a lot of nutrient deficiencies as well because we actually need stomach acid to digest and absorb some of our minerals. Um, so again, the Temple Total Digest is a great place, a great thing to try. Don't take it if you are taking an acid blocking medication because then you're kind of trying to do two opposite things at once. Um, we have a whole class that I teach on heartburn and reflux, and there are a lot of things that can help address that naturally so that you potentially could come off of something like a proton pump inhibitor like omeprazole or esomeprazole. Um, and then down the road, you might be able to take something like Temple Total Digest, but you don't want to take both of those things at once. Um, and just a caution, if you ever try taking betaine hydrochloride or Temple Total Digest, which contains that, and it causes pain or burning in the stomach, you definitely want, or, worsens heartburn, you definitely want to stop taking it and talk to your doctor, come in to talk to me. There are some reasons why, at least temporarily, people can't tolerate taking additional stomach acid. They can typically be rebalanced and corrected, and then you might be able to later on, but for the time being, you would definitely want to stop taking that. Let's see, we've got another question. How do you treat a extra long twisted colon? Um, I mean, it's not something you could change per se. So that would likely predispose to constipation, but all of the things we're talking about here can still help to address that constipation. Food allergies can worsen constipation. So, let's see, I'm going to share an image one more time. Hang with me for a moment. Let's see, there we go. Okay, so this, I have to share my screen. There we go. So this is an image of the cells, or kind of a cartoon image of the cells lining just like the very surface of the small intestine. Um, and you can see all those little tiny finger-like projections on the tops of the cells. Those are there to increase surface area, to help us very efficiently absorb our nutrition out of the foods that we eat. And you can see each one of those cells, that they're like the tall columns that have the little hair-like things on top, um, is attached, or in a normal, healthy gut lining, they're tightly attached to each other and there aren't any gaps in between. When the stomach gets inflamed for all sorts of reasons, whether it's alcohol use, high stress, medications, chemical exposure, a ton of things, those junctions between the cells can loosen up and gaps can open up between the cells. And then um, you can start to get bits of bacteria, bits of not fully digested food leaking into the bloodstream. And that causes a lot of low-level inflammation. That inflammation is a big factor with pretty much every chronic disease that you could name. And it can worsen digestive symptoms as well. Um, let's see. Okay, I think I am off of that. Screen sharing again. Um, let's see. So, when you have a lot of that leaky gut, it is more likely, if you're getting bits of not fully digested food leaking into the bloodstream, it's more likely that your immune system will start to get upset about those foods and start to develop food intolerances. Um, this is a really big topic. It is actually another class that we teach, so you can keep an eye out for that if you're interested in learning more. Um, but sometimes eating those foods that someone is having a major reaction to can worsen constipation and bloating and other digestive symptoms, definitely heartburn as well. And so just on a very surface level, um, addressing that would involve figuring out what the offending foods are, avoiding them while you take some gut healing supplements, probiotics, things like that, digestive factors like the digestive enzymes and things that we were talking about, kind of just reestablish order and balance in the digestive tract and help heal up those gaps they're called tight junctions, lining the small intestine. And that can help a lot with things like constipation. Um, it's more complicated than that, but we don't have time to go deep into that topic. So that's just kind of the primer. And then the microbiome. So just the balance of bacteria, yeasts, fungi, parasites, etc., in the intestines plays a huge role in constipation as well. We call it dysbiosis in medicine when there's an imbalance, whether that is overgrowth of yeasts like Candida, or there's a condition called small intestine bacterial overgrowth, where we have too many of the kind of colon bacteria growing higher up the digestive tube. Those would all fit under the term dysbiosis. In a healthy state, in the colon, we tend to have this really diverse, essentially like forest of bacterial species, which provide all sorts of benefits, from supporting and contributing to normal, healthy immune function, brain function, hormone production, neurotransmitter production, and a lot more than that. But with overuse of antibiotics, poor diet, high stress, bouts of food poisoning, exposure to environmental chemicals, etc., the balance can get majorly thrown off and allow overgrowth of yeasts or unhelpful types of bacteria. So again, that's another huge topic. We can't go into great detail, but we have a lot of really helpful testing that we can do at our clinic that can help to figure out if some of these things are going on. Advanced stool testing that tests for a whole bunch of different things, different types of bacteria, different types of yeasts, different types of parasites, um, digestive enzyme output, whether there's trace blood, all sorts of things. Um, but at a most basic level, the things that can help are avoiding processed and packaged foods, really cutting way back on sugar and yeasted breads or avoiding those entirely, eating more fiber. And so that is one type of prebiotic. Typically, when people talk about prebiotics, they're talking about specific types of fiber. And that is one of the kind of preferred foods of the beneficial bacteria that we want to predominate in the gut. And then the other preferential food of those healthy bacteria are the polyphenol compounds, which are like the plant antioxidants in, a diverse array um, of fruits and vegetables. Um, and so eating a wide range of different colors, like, we've all heard the eat the rainbow idea. That's one of the great benefits of that is those brightly colored compounds, or, they're not all brightly colored. For example, like onions and apples are very high in quercetin, which is sort of whitish. So not brightly colored, but it's a really wonderful polyphenol or plant antioxidant. Those also really tilt our microflora, bacteria toward the healthier type that we want more of. Organic green tea does this as well. So green tea preferentially fertilizes healthy bacteria while suppressing the growth of the unhelpful bacteria. And, there are a lot of herbs that kind of kill unpreferential. They kill everything. So maybe not to the degree of an antibiotic pharmaceutical, but taking high dose oregano oil in capsules, for example, not that it doesn't have its place, but it kills a lot of healthy bacteria as well. So if you're doing that long term, that can not be such a good thing to do. We do have a class on effective ways to manage yeast overgrowth. I'll put the link to that in the chat. And I do find that when people have really significant candida overgrowth or yeast overgrowth, that actually can really worsen constipation. So it's a useful thing to check on. And then that's something that we work with all the time. I can help diagnose that and develop a customized plan. So, another big factor with constipation is side effects from pharmaceuticals or supplements or recreational drugs. So iron is very constipating. If someone's taking iron for anemia, calcium can be constipating. Antihistamines kind of dry out the mucous membranes, but they also just dry out the digestive system. Antacids, some antidepressants, such as tricyclic antidepressants, definitely opioids. So, opiate pain medications. Diuretics can be constipating, calcium channel blockers, which are a type of medicine for high blood pressure, and more. Um, I am not saying go off your medications. A lot of times we need to be on these things for, very obvious reasons. And they can be really, really important for preserving health. That said, it might put you in a position where you have to do a little extra work to keep the bowels moving. So the things like Daiju and Temple Calm, which is the magnesium citrate, are really useful tools there. And then colonics, once in a while can be really helpful as well. Um, you can also have structural issues such as really tight abdominal muscles, kind of cinch everything down, surgical scarring, twist or a kink in the colon, colon spasm or constriction, that tortuous or very long and sort of twisty colon. And a lot of times people kind of hold stress or hold trauma in the abdomen as well. Like that's where they clench up with stress to kind of help cope. Um, and so all of those things can really contribute. Abdominal massage, gentle self-abdominal massage, or we have practitioners at Tummy Temple that are very experienced with abdominal massage, can be really, really helpful there. The colonics or colon hydrotherapy can help with that as well. And actually, all of our practitioners who do the colon hydrotherapy are trained in abdominal massage, and that is typically part of the treatment. And then we actually have scar tissue treatments available at our office, and that can be a huge factor as well. Past surgery, past abdominal trauma, addressing the scar tissue can really help like loosen everything up so there's less restriction. Doing castor oil packs, applying castor oil over the belly and over the liver, and covering it up with a cloth, applying a heating pack. That can be very anti-inflammatory. It can, yeah, kind of help with that abdominal tension, and just tends to be a useful tool with constipation. So it's a really simple, safe thing to try. Um, I typically send out a follow-up email after these classes, and so it's the only email you'll receive from me or Temple Natural Health unless you sign up for our mailing list. We do have really, really excellent articles and discounts and things like that on there. So, consider signing up if you're interested in that, but otherwise you'll just get this one email, and I will include a handout on how to do a castor oil pack, a few other things that we've talked about today, and a link to the class recording in case you want to refer back to anything. The smooth passage, the fiber supplement, can be helpful for addressing some of those structural issues as well. It just helps keep the stool soft and fluffy so that it is less likely to get stuck, even given these things that we've just been talking about, restrictions and tension in the abdomen. And then the Temple Calm, the magnesium citrate, is useful there too. So if you have already addressed all of these things that we're talking about that we have covered thus far, and you're still struggling, that is definitely a time to reach out and come in for a consult with myself or one of our other doctors for a more tailored, deeper investigation and more tailored care. The Daiju that we talked about and the colonics are very helpful in those cases, but also there can be contributing factors such as diabetes can play a role. Low thyroid function is quite common and really causes a ton of constipation. Signs that you might have low thyroid function would be dry skin, kind of diffuse hair loss, like noticing more hair falling out in your hairbrush or in the shower than you would expect, feeling very tired, feeling chilly, and being constipated. So if you have a number of those symptoms and haven't had your thyroid checked recently, that's a really good thing to do. And then neurological issues can contribute because the nerves that are talking to the gut are affected. So, for example, post-concussion or head injury, people can be more constipated. People struggling with multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's disease, spinal cord injury, or a stroke. Pelvic floor dysfunction is another actually quite common issue. And that's, I frequently will refer people for pelvic floor physical therapy to address that directly, and that can sometimes really, really help with constipation. Liver and gallbladder congestion. So, um, the liver produces this substance called bile. The gallbladder stores it up and acts like kind of a squeezy bulb time release device and puts out some bile every time we eat food with fat in it to help us emulsify the fats. Bile helps with motility and just helps us digest the food properly. So that can be a specific thing to kind of focus in on in naturopathic care, really help improve helping to improve liver and gallbladder health can make everything work a bit better. And then inflammatory bowel disease, like Crohn's or ulcerative colitis, can have a constipation side to it. They're more often known for having severe diarrhea, but there can be a constipation piece to that. And then laxative dependence. I see this quite frequently. Pardon me. Um, that people have, a person may have been struggling with constipation for a long time, and so they have been using laxatives for a long time. The laxatives are both depleting their electrolytes, and that's making it so that the colon just can't effectively squeeze anymore because it actually needs balanced electrolytes to produce the squeeze that moves things through. And then also, the colon has just had this really strong stimulation applied via the laxative, and relied on this very strong stimulation in order to have a bowel movement for so long that you sort of lose some of the capacity, at least, for the time being, to respond to the more regular kind of gut-brain connection signals to have a bowel movement. And so sometimes people really need a lot of help of how to come off of their very strong laxatives in a way that we can kind of get the body working better on its own again. Let's see, supplements of prebiotic and probiotic capsules. Are you asking for specific recommendations? Um, if so, I mean, we have a couple probiotics that we carry because we find them very effective. And so we have one called Flora Pro that is a really good kind of starter one. But yes, that can be very helpful. It's not always just take a probiotic, though. There are some probiotics that are studied and found to be helpful for constipation, and then some that are helpful for immune support more so than other things, some that are helpful for blood sugar support. So the science of probiotics has progressed to the point where it really is very specific, what you're taking it for. But yes, probiotic foods can be really helpful. Taking probiotics can be really helpful. Um, okay, so we are getting to the end of the class today. Just a couple last thoughts. Um, I want to touch on what to expect when addressing constipation. Um, there can be ups and downs as you're kind of figuring this out. Um, this is not a hard and fast rule, but one kind of general guideline would be it can take 1 month of treatment for every year that you've had an issue, had a particular health issue. So, for example, if you've been constipated for 20 years, it might be like working at it and adjusting things and like working on retraining the bowels and, clearing out hardened stool and uh, um, trying different things over a period of many, a year or two to really um, resolve the issue fully. So it's not typically going to be instantaneous as long if you've had the issue for a very long time. That said, sometimes I see kind of miraculous responses and things self-correct very quickly, but it doesn't always go that way. You tend to get better results with a multifaceted approach. So if you just take magnesium citrate, that can absolutely help. But if you also, reduce cheese way down in your diet and do some abdominal massage or try a colonic or two, um, and start doing some like cat-cow yoga stretches every day, that typically will work a lot better than just taking one thing or just changing one thing. It can take a little bit of trial and error. It's not always, the first thing you try fixes everything. There can be some tweaking. There can be some figuring out which supplements work best for your body. So be aware of that. And then, doing some maintenance can be really useful as well, especially with long-term constipation. So, for example, we will often say, like, once we get everything working really well, coming in for a colonic approximately every 3 months can be really, really useful because partly because the bile also functions to carry out environmental toxicants, and it tends to get kind of recycled and reused in the body over and over again. So it's a really helpful detoxification support as well, but also to avoid that kind of slow buildup of stool in the colon, coming in once in a while can be really, really useful. That said, it is totally doable. I have seen so many people with a lifetime history of constipation transform quite dramatically and just, have a totally different experience moving forward. Um, so, yes, I see this over and over and over again. There is lots of hope. Um, that is the end of the class today. I want to ask if there's any more questions before we close for the day. Um, we do offer some discounts if you'd like to try anything from that we've talked about today, any of the services or supplements. So in the follow-up email, I'll send out a coupon code or a discount code that you can use for 20% off the products that we talked about today. And then if you'd like to try one of our services, there'll also be a discount code to schedule a service for $30 off. You have to book it within the next week, but the next week after when the email goes out, not after today, because sometimes it takes us a couple days to get the email out. So you have to book it during that week, but you can schedule it for further out if your schedule doesn't allow you to get in within that time. Thank you for being here. I hope this was useful to you. And thank you again to the co-op for hosting these classes. I really appreciate you. I think we'll close it down if there's no more questions.
Thanks so much, Dr. Wood. Appreciate
Absolutely.
you.
My pleasure. Happy to be here. Thanks for coming. All right. Take care. Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.